Hello and welcome everybody to this XTB live news. My name is Walid Koudmani, market analyst for XTB. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the main events happening in the markets this morning, what we can expect from the US session, what to keep an eye on in the economic calendar, and what have been the main events this week since we haven't had a video since Monday. So we're going to take a little bit of a recap at what happened and what we can keep an eye on also heading into the weekend. So with this last session of today, Friday, the 16th of April, 2021. So with the recap of yesterday, very positive session in the US. We had US session ending with indices at record high. S&Ps gained 1.11%, Dow Jones 0.9%, and the Nasdaq 1.31%. Not as good of a performance for the Russell 2000, so the small cap, but also up 0.4%. After that, we had the close of the Asian session, which also ended higher, and then that translated into a positive start of the European session with the DAX breaking through all-time highs and reaching new all-time highs, as I'm going to show you in a minute and on the charts. Not all indices in Europe were performing well. Well, most of them were, a few weren't, but the ones that were performing very well, especially with the DAX. Bitcoin still around $61,000, $62,000, slight pullback in the crypto market all around. And I'm going to show you some big moves in gold, so stick around for that. When it comes to the economic calendar today, not much on the macro release. We have the University of Michigan consumer sentiment, which is expected to improve. And that kind of gives you an idea of the outlook of the consumers and the potential prospect of a reopening and the recovery from the pandemic, of course. Other than that, we have the earning season that continues in Wall Street. As I mentioned at the beginning of the week, this was going to be the week of financial institutions, really. We had a lot of big banks during the week, and today we have three more: Morgan Stanley, State Street Corporation, and Bank of New York Mellon. A lot of them have been performing well, and that has reflected in the stock market performance as well. So, but the financial sector has been one of the ones that has been least affected from the pandemic, practically speaking, because a lot of the workforce was able to transfer to the work from home scheme for them, at least. Other than that, let's take a look at the charts as always. We start with the DAX, which has been the main mover, or one of the main movers today. This is on the 4-hour chart. You can see quite a bit of consolidation for the past almost 2 weeks. So from the beginning of the month, beginning of April, end of March. At the end of March, we had this upward move towards the end of March. And then we had the consolidation in a very narrow range, about 150. And then after the break, we saw this upward move to 15,441. Which is now being tested once again. Actually, if I break down a little bit more, at the moment, it is actually being tested, and technically, it could be acting as the closest resistance because the all-time high, but at the same time, it hasn't been tested that much, so it remains to be seen if we'll be able to break through it or not. The index still remains above all these moving averages, but the RSI is in overbought territory around 80, so 79.8. So it does remain to be seen. And if we do take a look at the previous trends that we've had, so we had this lateral move for 2 weeks and then the break. But before that, we had an upward move of a few days. So this went on for about 5 days. And then we also had more consolidation here and then another upward move even stronger. So it seems to be that sometimes it just pushes higher, then consolidates and pushes higher. But how far or when it's going to stop, especially when we're hitting all-time highs, it's really hard to tell. But it's worth keeping an eye on the charts just to see how this behaves, especially compared to the previous upward moves. When it comes to the UK index, actually, also very positive performance on the 4-hour chart. So we had a little bit of a pullback last week, but then this week was all positive almost. And slowly, but as you can see, many green candles, up 2.25%, trading very close to 7,000 points, 6,982. That's the UK index breaking past these highs from a few months ago, from December. US indices, as I mentioned, all-time highs. US 500 trading around 4,170 right before around the start of the session, above the averages and above this potential support area around 4,154. As you can see, the price pulled back slightly after the upward move and reaching a new all-time high, pulled back and tested it slightly and then continued the upward move. Now, this is a similar situation, for example, to here, where we saw this upward move, new all-time high, pulled back, and then continuing. But when it comes to the all-time highs and them acting as resistances, it is very hard to tell what's going to happen. So it could act as the resistance, and we see in more consolidation as we've seen in these areas, or it could keep moving up, or it could just be something that we have to keep an eye on even more closely, especially because of the earnings season in Wall Street and all the stocks that are listed in the S&P, of course. But the index this week so far, if we want to go back this week, so from the start of the week, today is the 16th. Let's take it from the 9th or the here. See, up around 1.5%, 1.6%. So not as much as European indices, but also breaking through all-time highs, as you can see. The US 100 Nasdaq Tech Index, similar situation to the S&P that I just showed you. So the Nasdaq had this incredible rebound, let's say, because for those of you that have been following the XTB live news, I've always mentioned on these videos how they were both performing well, but the Nasdaq was actually about 1,000 points behind its all-time high, while the S&P was very close, and they were both performing well in the short term. The Nasdaq managed to completely catch up to this and reach the all-time high and then break through it, and now we're at new all-time highs. And as we speak, in fact, we're breaking through the previous ones as well. So you saw we actually had quite a big pullback though, and that was different from any other situation we've had here, because as you can see, the pullbacks have all been smaller. But here it was actually quite a big pullback, almost the exact same size as the upward move itself. But then we had this other rebound, testing of the previous resistance a little bit higher, and we can draw some lines and you can see that similar areas are being tested both on the upside and on the downside on all these levels, and now breaking through this all-time high, reaching a new one around 14,050 points. When it comes to the commodity market, big moves in gold. So throughout the week, really, there have been a lot of big, and last week and this week, a lot of big moves in gold, a lot of volatility in gold. So gold has been one of the markets that has been kind of trending sideways as well, as you can see. But after dropping to, once again, this low at the end of March, and then trading sideways around here, it managed to test the 1755 resistance a couple of times. And in fact, last time we spoke, it was around here, having tested it again. And it actually managed to break through it on the third test. So you can see it tested it once. We had this huge pullback that actually continued down to the low from the previous low, so 1678, and then acted as support again. Then this upward move, testing the resistance once again, and then pull back once again, but not as low. As I mentioned last time, it hadn't pulled back as low as the first time. And in fact, the upward move was more clear than the first time. And then after rebounding off this, slight consolidation, and then a break above the resistance. As you can see, very big green candles breaking through. Slight pullback as always, or as we've seen in other situations as well here. And then a continuation of the upward move heading towards this other resistance that I mentioned around 1785. But gold up huge in the last couple of days. So if we take a look at in the last few days, gold up almost 3%, 2.8%, and now trading at 1780, which is very far from the recent low of 1678. So quite a good recovery for gold. Let's take a look at silver as well and see what the performance of silver is. Similar situation. Silver was trading stuck around $25. Above and below it, as you can see, just kind of sideways. And then after managing to test it for a few times, breaks through with a positive sentiment as well of gold, and up 3% in the last couple of days. Oil, also positive performance for oil. This is despite OPEC agreeing, as I mentioned in the past, to increasing the production. And at the end of the day, when they increase production, it is in calculating the fact that there could be a recovery in demand, or based on that fact, I would say. But let's take a look at, this is an inverted chart. So this one at the blue one, which I'll remove at the moment, let's just keep it on the oil Brent. You can see, again, similar push to gold, really big candles up, but up 6%, almost 5.5%. in the last few days. And as you can see, it was consolidating for quite some time from the middle of March almost in this area. Yes, testing higher levels and lower levels, but in the end, most of the trading was happening within this. Then it managed to break through the Ichimoku cloud on the H4, so the 4-hour time frame. And you can see the slight uptrend starting, and then the big move up with some sideways movement, but as you can see, also heading upwards. At the moment, it's approaching this other price reaction area at the top, which, as you can see, this kind of would look like a gap if there wasn't these two candles. So you can assume that it's kind of closing the gap if there was a gap, but also just closing the huge area where it hadn't traded for in quite some time, in over a month. In about a month. So testing these levels that in the past were acting as support, not very much, but yes, they have acted. So could potentially be considered as resistance around 67, 67.20, 67.30. And we'll just have to wait and see if it will manage to continue the upward move or not. WTI, also positive performance. WTI, as you can see, a lot of lateral trading, sideways movements, and consolidation, especially in the 4-hour. I can show you. You can see, yes, pullbacks and testing of this lower limit, which has been tested in the past. But then, once again, it gets narrower and narrower. So it starts as very wide movements, as you can see, and then it gets narrower, and then it breaks through the upper limit, and then it starts the upward move. Again, testing this upper limit like the Brent oil around this area before the pullback from March. So if we move to currencies, let's take a look at the market analysis section. We can see that mixed performance from a lot of currencies. USD performing well, except against these currencies. The euro performing well as well against most currencies. Pound, positive performance. The Swiss franc as well. The New Zealand dollar is actually performing negatively. The Canadian dollar is actually one of the top performers, probably also related to the positive performance of oil, which they tend to be correlated sometimes. The yen and all these currencies are actually performing quite poorly. But if we go and take a look at some pairs, we can see pound USD, so cable. We can see that after rebounding from this area around 137.1, actually testing 138 as well. So it's hovering between 137 and 138. Again, some more sideways movements, but as you can see, higher lows and higher highs being made, except for here, testing the previous lows. So at the moment, it's testing also these areas. You can see the charts kind of a little bit resemble each other with the with oil as well. There's a lot of similar big moves and then recoveries happening on the markets. But again, all these markets running into potential resistance levels and worth keeping an eye on whether or not they can continue or they'll pull back or stick in the same range they've been stuck in. EURUSD, the most popular currency pair. But yes, pound USD again, 138 testing that level. EURUSD approaching 120. A little bit different performance than the pound, because you can see the upward move actually started quite a while ago. And this chart on the overlay, actually I'll fix it a little bit. So you can see this is EURUSD, sideways movements after the upward move actually, but at the moment in the short term trending upward, testing this upper limit, which has been tested in the past. Resistance acted as a resistance in the past, so it is quite tough. But this is on the short term, so it remains to be seen if we'll be able to. And on the potential support around 119.5 could be considered that very, very short term, because as you can see for the past few days, it's been stuck within this range. But also if we want to put the USD index, so to show the performance of the US dollar index, you can see US dollar is actually pulling back slightly today, and Euro USD is actually going higher slightly. So I'd like to have these two charts overlaid just because they give me an idea of the performance of the euro, but also the performance of the dollar and whether whatever is happening with the euro is related to the dollar or the euro strength. And so that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Walid Koudmani. I'll see you next week. Don't forget about our investing day, and good luck with your trading and have a good weekend. Thank you.